Have you ever wondered, amid the clamor of work, worries, and endless pursuits, what truly brings us happiness? It is not the new car, it is not a new title, and it is certainly not the fleeting approval of a like on social media. In our modern world, we are bombarded daily with promises of instant happiness. Just buy more, just achieve more. Yet one day, we awaken to a simple truth. Achievements and possessions are but shadows. If happiness is not found there, then where does the truth lie? Stoicism, an ancient philosophy seemingly distant, offers a surprisingly intimate answer. Happiness is not something we chase. It is something we deliberately cultivate each day from within ourselves. Today, we will journey together through the wisdom of the ancient sages and the insights of modern science to uncover how to build a joy that endures, unshaken by the tempests of life. 1. Happiness begins within, not in what we possess. In modern society, we are often taught that happiness must be achieved through personal success, the approval of others, or the accumulation of material wealth. Advertising, social media, and even the education system nurture the belief that the more we have, the more fulfilled we will feel. Yet Stoic philosophy reveals a starkly different truth. Happiness is not the result of what we possess, but the outcome of mastering our thoughts, emotions, and responses. According to Stoics like Epictetus, we have no absolute power over external events. Money, fame, health, relationships all lie beyond our complete control. If our happiness depends on these things, our peace will forever be fragile, swayed by every unforeseen change. To place happiness in the hands of the external world is to cast ourselves adrift on the open sea without an oar. Stoicism teaches that true happiness can only be attained by focusing on what lies within our control, our attitudes, reactions, thoughts, and actions. This requires continuous discipline, shifting our focus from external circumstances to the inner life. Instead of asking, "What can I achieve to be happy?" the Stoic asks, "How can I transform my thinking and way of living so that I am whole, regardless of circumstance?" A profound example comes from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and one of Stoicism's greatest minds, who, even at the pinnacle of power, constantly reminded himself that power and wealth were fleeting. He wrote, "Remember that very little is needed to live a happy life." These were not words of resignation, but a steadfast affirmation that happiness springs from a simple heart. Once we release unrealistic expectations, one of the core tenets of this philosophy is the reduction of desires. Stoics believe that the more we crave, the more we entangle ourselves in dissatisfaction and suffering. To hunger for things beyond our control, success, praise, fortune, is to forge invisible chains of disappointment. Conversely, by limiting desire and adjusting expectations, we reclaim freedom for the mind. Practicing simplicity of thought does not mean rejecting the comforts of modern life, but refusing to let them define our worth or dictate our emotions. A Stoic may enjoy what is available, but does not lose tranquility if it is absent. The essence is not to deny pleasure, but to detach our contentment from external conditions. Stoicism also identifies comparison as a major source of human misery. When we constantly measure ourselves against others, we lose sight of the joys already within our grasp. This philosophy urges us to turn inward, to focus on internal progress, rather than seek validation from others. Enduring happiness cannot be built upon the shifting sands of social norms or public opinion. By training the mind not to depend on what lies beyond our reach, the Stoic forges a solid foundation for self-mastery and peace. They understand that true happiness is not found in having more, but in governing oneself better. When we are no longer at the mercy of external fluctuations, we are finally free to fully inhabit each moment. Though born over 2 millennia ago, this philosophy remains vividly relevant today, where the pressure to succeed and the thirst for material wealth have never been fiercer. In this landscape, the wisdom of Stoicism stands not merely as a philosophy of life, but as a remedy for souls seeking steadiness amid life's relentless storms. 2. Calm amidst adversity, Apathia, not indifference. In Stoic philosophy, Apathia stands as a central concept, often misunderstood. Many, upon hearing the term, mistake it for emotional coldness, detachment, or indifference toward life. Yet in the true spirit of Stoicism, Apathia is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to maintain a steady and tranquil mind even when confronted by the unpredictable storms of life. Apathia does not ask us to become unfeeling toward sorrow or joy. Rather, it calls for the disciplined training of the mind, so that extreme emotions do not drag us away from reason or lead us to impulsive actions. Great Stoics like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius emphasized that emotions are a natural part of being human, but allowing emotions to govern our actions is what must be avoided. From the Stoic perspective, external events, loss, failure, illness, betrayal, are neither good nor bad by nature. It is our interpretation and reaction to them that determines their impact on our inner world. One who attains Apathia does not cease to feel sorrow at loss, but faces that sorrow with composure, refusing to be swept into the abyss of despair. Practicing Apathia demands continuous effort in distinguishing between what lies within our control and what does not. Serenity does not arise from denying reality or fleeing from pain, but from accepting that many things in life are beyond our power to change. We cannot prevent storms from coming, but we can learn to build an inner fortress that stands firm against them. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reminded himself that each day he would encounter liars, traitors, and the selfish. Yet rather than allow these encounters to disturb his peace, he accepted them as natural parts of human life. Instead of resentment, he chose to keep his spirit untainted, refusing to let the faults of others pollute his own soul. A key element of Apathia is the intentionality of response. Stoics understood that emotions such as anger, fear, and sadness arise naturally. However, whether we act on these emotions is a conscious choice. Rather than react impulsively, they focused on responding deliberately, in ways aligned with their virtue and values. Apathia also does not mean apathy toward the suffering of others. On the contrary, Stoics believed in acting with compassion and justice. Yet this compassion springs not from blind emotional entanglement, but from a resilient inner strength, recognizing that true help is rooted in reason and virtue, not in losing oneself in another's sorrow. The practice of Apathia includes preparing the mind for adversity through a technique called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. By envisioning potential hardships beforehand, the mind is trained to meet them without shock or despair when they arise. At a deeper level, Apathia represents the pinnacle of self-mastery. When one reaches this state, they are no longer a captive to external forces, but the true master of their inner domain. Success does not inflate them with pride, nor does failure crush them. They walk steadfastly through all circumstances, grounded in calmness and freedom. In today's world, where the pressures of success, a flood of negative news and personal crisis can easily hurl the mind into turmoil, the cultivation of Apathia in the Stoic tradition is more vital than ever. It is not merely a tool for enduring adversity, but a pathway to building a life of resilience, serenity, and enduring strength amid all upheavals. 3. Suffering is a choice, not destiny. In the Stoic worldview, physical pain and emotional wounds are inevitable parts of life. Yet Stoics draw a sharp distinction between pain, a natural response of body and mind to adverse events, and suffering, which arises from the way we choose to think about and react to those experiences. According to Epictetus, it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This statement contains a fundamental truth. We cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can absolutely control how we interpret and respond to what happens. Suffering, therefore, is not an inescapable fate, but a product of perception and personal choice. Consider two people who both experience career failure. One allows the event to define their entire self-worth, sinking into feelings of uselessness and despair. The other views failure as an opportunity for learning and self-improvement. Both confront the same external event, but their internalization differs, leading to vastly different emotional experience. It is their perception and reaction, not the event itself, that determines the extent of their suffering. Stoicism teaches that all profound negative emotions, anger, envy, despair, stem from mistaken judgments about the world. When we believe that external things such as recognition, wealth, or health are essential for happiness, losing them inevitably brings suffering. But if we see these things rightly as externals, factors beyond our absolute control, their loss no longer wounds the true happiness that's within us. A vital practice in Stoic philosophy is cognitive reframing. When facing adversity, instead of reacting with automatic emotion, the Stoic practitioner asks, is this event truly bad, or is it merely an opportunity to cultivate patience, courage, or wisdom? This is not about denying reality or sugarcoating circumstances, but about consciously reshaping the meaning we assign to events. Another technique for alleviating suffering is active acceptance, rather than resisting or resenting what has occurred, which lies beyond our ability to change. The Stoic chooses to align with reality by relinquishing the futile desire to control the uncontrollable. The mind naturally becomes lighter and more lucid. The saint Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything that happens is as natural as the changing of seasons. If winter does not enrage us, neither should life's inevitable adversities disturb our peace. Suffering arises chiefly from the expectation that life should conform to our wishes. By letting go of that expectation, we free ourselves from the deepest roots of sorrow. Another crucial element in rejecting suffering is the cultivation of inner strength, fortitude. The Stoic mind is prepared for every circumstance by envisioning potential losses, failures, and hardships ahead of time. Thus, when adversity truly strikes, they are ready to meet it without being overwhelmed by negative emotions. Stoic philosophy does not deny that pain is real, but it points to the space between pain and suffering, a space where our freedom to choose our response resides. Recognizing this separation grants us immense power. The power to choose peace over despair, growth over surrender. In practice, transforming pain into an opportunity for inner development not only diminishes suffering, but also builds resilience. In this way, the Stoic does not merely survive adversity, but grows stronger because of it. Thus, suffering is not an inevitable companion of hardship. In the end, suffering is a choice we have the power to refuse. 4. Mastering emotion. Not suppression, but guidance. One of the most common misconceptions about Stoicism is the belief that it encourages people to become emotionless, cold, or to completely deny their feelings. Yet what the Stoics truly emphasize is not the suppression of emotion, but the understanding and rational guidance of it. From the Stoic perspective, emotions are a natural part of being human. Feeling sorrow at loss, anger at injustice, or anxiety before a challenge are instinctive reactions. Philosophers like Seneca and Epictetus did not deny the existence of such emotions. They pointed out that the problem lies not in feeling emotions, but in allowing emotions to dominate our actions and strip us of our agency. Stoicism distinguishes between spontaneous emotions and cultivated emotions. Spontaneous emotions are those initial reactions beyond our complete control, such as fear when faced with danger. However, if after the initial response we continue to nurture and amplify the emotion through irrational and negative thoughts, the emotion becomes something we can and should regulate. The goal of mastering emotion in Stoicism is to keep the mind clear, refusing to let emotions cloud sound judgment. The Stoic practitioner learns to observe emotions with mindfulness, to recognize them as they arise, and to decide their actions based on reason rather than impulsive reaction. A crucial illustration comes from Epictetus. He likened the mind to a horse handler. When a horse panics, the handler does not panic along with it, but holds the reins firmly, guiding the horse back to calm. Similarly, when emotions surge, our task is not to deny their existence, but to firmly grasp the reins of reason and guide our actions in accordance with virtue and rightful purpose. One powerful Stoic practice is to pause before reacting. When strong emotions arise, instead of acting immediately, the Stoic creates a deliberate pause, even if just for a few seconds, to assess the situation rationally. This pause allows the practitioner to distinguish between impulsive reaction and intentional response. Marcus Aurelius, in his writings, often reminded himself that anger is a form of weakness of the mind. Rather than letting anger dictate his actions, he chose to acknowledge it, examine its origins, and act in a way aligned with virtue, justice, patience, and self-control. This does not mean the Stoic never expresses emotion. On the contrary, they may show compassion, love, determination, or even sorrow. However, these expressions do not arise from loss of control, but from a conscious choice to serve the higher goal of living virtuously and justly. Mastering emotion also involves training the mind to anticipate situations likely to provoke strong feelings. By envisioning potential challenges ahead of time, premeditatio malorum, the Stoic builds a mental readiness to handle emotions when they come, rather than being caught off guard and overwhelmed. Ultimately, mastering emotion is not achieved overnight. It demands persistent practice, continuous inner observation, and an unwavering commitment to living by reason and virtue. Yet through this process, one attains a noble inner freedom, a state where they are no longer tossed about by passing emotions, but live and act with steadiness, intention, and humanity. 5. Negative visualization. Imagining loss. In the Stoic tradition, one of the most important tools for training the mind is negative visualization, the deliberate practice of imagining loss. Though at first it may seem pessimistic, this method holds profound significance in cultivating gratitude, mindfulness, and acceptance of reality. Negative visualization does not aim to sow fear or plunge the mind into sadness. On the contrary, by consciously imagining the loss of cherished things, possessions, health, relationships, even life itself, the Stoic prepares the mind to face life's inevitable impermanence. In doing so, they come to cherish what they have more deeply and diminish the shock and pain when misfortune truly strikes. Stoics like Seneca emphasize that if people never contemplate the possibility of loss, they will be easily shattered when reality arrives unannounced. Conversely, if the mind has been trained to accept that misfortune may occur, adversity is greeted as a natural part of life, not as an injustice or a tragedy. The practice begins with setting aside quiet time each day to reflect. If today I were to lose a loved one, if tomorrow I were to lose my job, if the day after I were to lose my health, how would I respond? The goal is not to sink into worry, but to acknowledge with honesty everything in life is temporary and beyond absolute ownership. Through such visualization, the Stoic reminds themselves that all they possess is a gift, not an entitlement. This attitude nurtures genuine gratitude for even the simplest things: a good meal, a meaningful conversation, a day of health. Negative visualization also serves as a spiritual armor against actual loss. When the mind has rehearsed loss in imagination, it becomes more resilient against real-world sorrow. This does not diminish the value of what is lost, but enables a person to meet suffering with calmness, clarity, and self-possession. Marcus Aurelius, in his personal writings, often reminded himself each morning that he might encounter selfish, foolish, or treacherous people. By envisioning such challenges beforehand, he avoided surprise or anger when they materialized. This form of negative visualization focused on social experience, aiming to preserve equanimity and compassion. Another profound aspect of negative visualization is that it helps loosen attachment to external things. When one recognizes that everything, from wealth to health, can vanish at any moment, the Stoic naturally shifts the foundation of happiness inward. Joy no longer depends on possession, but on living fully and mindfully in each present moment. However, the practice must be carried out with balance. It is not about obsessively worrying over possible misfortunes, but about calmly and wisely preparing the mind. The Stoic does not live in perpetual fear, but in profound appreciation for what exists now. Through negative visualization, the Stoic cultivates a soul that loves deeply without clinging, that enjoys life without being enslaved by it. This is the foundation for building a rich, resilient inner life, one that remains steadfast in the face of the inevitable losses of the human condition. 6. Virtue, the source of true happiness. In Stoic philosophy, virtue is not merely a vague moral concept. It is the true and sole source of happiness. The Stoics assert that wealth, success, or fame do not determine human happiness. Rather, it is living in accordance with noble moral principles that brings lasting inner peace and joy. According to them, the external world is ever-changing and beyond human control. Health may fail, possessions may be lost, reputation may fade. If our happiness depends on these things, it will be fragile and easily shattered by the shifting tides of life. By contrast, if happiness is grounded in virtue, it remains unaffected by external circumstances. For virtue, the capacity to think and act rightly, always lies within the control of the individual. Stoic philosophy identifies 4 cardinal virtues as the foundation of a happy and righteous life: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Each virtue plays a crucial role in guiding thought, emotion, and action through all of life's conditions. Wisdom is the ability to discern what lies within our control and what does not. The wise do not squander their energy on what is beyond reach, but focus it on self-improvement and the fulfillment of duty. Wisdom also encompasses the capacity to judge right from wrong, to perceive the true value of things, and to make decisions rooted in reason rather than fleeting emotion. Courage is understood as the perseverance to do what is right, even at the cost of pain, failure, or loss. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to overcome fear and act in accordance with moral values. In a world rife with injustice and adversity, courage empowers a person to preserve their integrity and resist compromising with wrong. Justice is the foundation of all proper relations among people. The just person acts honestly, kindly, and with respect for the rights of others. Justice is not merely about obeying the law, but requires a heartfelt commitment to seeking the common good, even at personal cost. In Stoic thought, justice is a natural duty, not an optional ideal. Temperance is the ability to regulate desires and act with moderation. The temperate person neither chases after unrestrained pleasures nor denies themselves rightful joys. Instead, they maintain balance, enjoying life wisely without being ruled by fleeting indulgences. Temperance shields a person from the self-destruction that comes from overindulgence. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most celebrated philosophers, wrote, "If you practice each of these virtues in your daily life, you will achieve happiness without depending on any external factor." This underscores that happiness is not distant or mysterious, but the natural result of living consistently with moral principles. Stoicism also emphasizes that virtue is not a one-time achievement, but a lifelong discipline. Each day, through the smallest of actions, we are given the opportunity to cultivate wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Through this daily practice, the soul becomes steadfast, no longer swayed by success or failure, praise or blame. By placing virtue at the center of life, the Stoic practitioner builds an inner fortress, a source of happiness untouched by the ever-changing external world. Virtue is not only the foundation of a good life, but the beacon that lights the path to true inner freedom and enduring happiness. 7. Taking command of time. Living with purpose. In Stoic philosophy, time is regarded as the most precious asset each person possesses. Seneca, in his work On the Shortness of Life, emphasized that most people do not truly live. They merely exist because they allow time to slip away unconsciously, lost in trivial pursuits and vain desires. According to him, the tragedy is not that life is short, but that people squander it on unworthy things. Stoicism views the active mastery of time as a crucial factor in achieving a purposeful and fulfilling life. For if we fail to govern how we spend our time, we are easily swept away by the nameless currents of busyness, forfeiting the chance to grow ourselves and serve higher values. Controlling time in the Stoic spirit does not mean cramming one's schedule full or chasing endless productivity. Instead, it means consciously choosing how to spend each day, prioritizing actions that align with virtue and long-term goals, and having the courage to decline what is unnecessary or distracting. A concrete practice is to begin each morning by clearly identifying key priorities. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself upon waking that he was born to act for the common good, not to lie idle in bed or chase fleeting pleasures. Setting a clear moral purpose for the day helps the mind stay focused and resist meaningless temptations. The practice of time control also includes regularly reviewing how one is spending their time. Stoics frequently ask themselves, does what I am doing truly serve my rightful purpose? This question helps strip away wasteful activities, toxic relationships, and the vain pursuits so often celebrated by society. Seneca warned that people are often more generous with their time than with any other possession. They guard their money carefully, yet squander hours on meaningless conversations, trivial entertainment, or fruitless arguments. Meanwhile, time, the one asset that can never be reclaimed, is spent recklessly and ungraciously. Another vital aspect of mastering time is accepting the finiteness of life. The Stoic does not shy away from the thought of death, but uses it as a motivation to live each day with fullness and meaning. The sharp awareness of life's limits makes every moment more precious and urges us to focus on what truly matters. Living with purpose does not require grand acts or spectacular achievements. Sometimes it is simply giving full attention to a small task, engaging wholeheartedly in an honest conversation, or performing an act of kindness. What matters is that each action is undertaken with complete awareness, full presence, and in harmony with one's inner values. Taking command of time also helps alleviate feelings of overwhelm, confusion, or meaninglessness. When each day is lived with clear intent, the mind becomes clearer, more confident, and steadfast. The Stoic practitioner does not allow themselves to be a victim of circumstance or social habit, but becomes the true master of their life. By honoring and wisely using each moment, we not only build a meaningful life, but also forge the inner strength and moral character essential for enduring happiness. 8. Living simply, streamlining the unnecessary. In Stoic philosophy, simplicity is not merely a lifestyle choice, but an essential means to achieve inner freedom. The Stoics believe that clinging to possessions, social status, and unnecessary desires is the root cause of anxiety, disappointment, and suffering. Simplifying one's life, both materially and mentally, is the path to peace, self-mastery, and enduring happiness. From the Stoic perspective, human nature requires little to live a good life. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the true essentials of life are simple: a healthy body, a serene mind, and a soul aligned with nature and reason. Any desires beyond these basic needs risk becoming chains, binding a person to vain pursuits and leading inevitably to dissatisfaction. Living simply does not mean rejecting all comforts or embracing extreme asceticism. Instead, it emphasizes consciously choosing what is truly necessary and valuable, while having the courage to let go of excesses that distract the mind and weaken virtue. The goal is to free oneself from dependency on externals and turn inward toward the cultivation of character. A concrete practice of Stoic simplicity involves minimizing material possessions. Seneca, one of the wealthiest Stoic philosophers of his time, nonetheless advised others and disciplined himself to live simply. He emphasized that there is no inherent wrong in possessing wealth, provided that one's mind remains free from attachment to it. The danger, he warned, lies in the tendency for possessions to generate anxiety about preservation, maintenance, and loss. Beyond material goods, simplicity also extends to mental life. This means letting go of unrealistic expectations, imposed social standards, and concerns over matters beyond one's control. Marcus Aurelius advised focusing solely on the moral duty at hand, rather than worrying about outcomes beyond one's influence. When the mind is no longer entangled with trivialities, a person can channel their full energy into living a meaningful life. Simplicity also touches relationships. Not every connection nurtures the soul. Stoics carefully chose whom they associated with, steering clear of those who incite greed, envy, or negative emotions. They sought relationships grounded in honesty, respect, and mutual support, in becoming better versions of themselves. Another important dimension is the management of information. In the modern world, the relentless flood of information easily overwhelms the mind. The Stoic practitioner recognizes that consuming excessive negative news, trivial entertainment, or meaningless debates drains clarity and inner discipline. Therefore, they deliberately streamline their intake, choosing only content that uplifts awareness and moral understanding. Living simply, from the Stoic point of view, not only brings relief to material life, but also creates mental space for reflection, philosophy, and the cultivation of virtue. When needs are refined, desires are restrained, and distractions minimized, one can focus entirely on living according to reason and virtue, the true foundations of happiness. Through the practice of simplicity, the Stoic attains true freedom, freedom from social pressure, freedom from material bondage, and above all, freedom from the inner impulses that might lead them astray from the path of virtue. 9. Building relationships rooted in virtue. In Stoic philosophy, relationships are not merely interactions or elaborations between people. They are an inseparable part of the journey toward the cultivation and practice of virtue. Stoicism emphasizes that to attain enduring happiness, one must build and maintain relationships grounded in strong ethical principles, such as honesty, justice, kindness, and respect. Stoic philosophers viewed human beings as social creatures, born to live and cooperate with one another. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that we exist to work together, much like the limbs of a body. Each person, therefore, has a role within the collective, and fulfilling that role properly is an expression of living in accordance with nature. However, participating in social life does not mean conforming to flawed standards, but rather maintaining personal integrity, even amidst complex circumstances. A key principle in forming relationships, according to Stoicism, is placing virtue above personal gain. The Stoic does not approach relationships with the question, "What can I get from this person?" but rather, "How can I act justly and kindly toward this person?" In this way, relationships are built not on exploitation, but on mutual respect and sincere goodwill. In choosing companions, Stoic philosophy advises caution. Not everyone is fit to walk alongside us. On the path of virtue, Epictetus warned that association with the unprincipled could erode one's own inner values. Therefore, the Stoic seeks relationships that encourage moral growth, foster self-improvement, and support each other in living according to reason. This does not mean that Stoics disdain or shun those who are imperfect. They recognize that all humans have weaknesses and flaws. However, they distinguish between showing compassion and forgiveness and allowing themselves to be drawn into behaviors or ways of life that contradict virtue. When confronted with selfishness, deceit, or injustice, the Stoic remains tolerant, yet steadfast in their principles. Another essential element in Stoic relationships is honest communication. Honesty is not merely speaking the truth, but being transparent in intention, in action, and in self-expression. The Stoic avoids flattery and deceit aimed at personal advantage, choosing instead to maintain sincerity, even when it invites uncomfortable reactions from others. Justice, too, is indispensable. The Stoic treats others based on the universal dignity of all human beings, without bias or self-interest. They strive to understand others' perspectives and needs, and to act with fairness and respect, regardless of the other's social status or position. Moreover, forgiveness is vital for sustaining healthy relationships. Seneca taught that one must learn to forgive the faults of others, for each of us is prone to error. Forgiveness does not mean condoning wrongdoing. It is the release of resentment, an emotion that harms the one who clings to it far more than it harms its target. Finally, building relationships based on virtue requires accepting reality. No one is perfect, and no relationship is without trials. The Stoic understands that patience, tolerance, and commitment to moral values are the keys to nurturing relationships that are deep and enduring. By maintaining relationships founded on honesty, justice, kindness, and respect, we not only enrich our social lives, but also strengthen our inner character, cultivate virtue, and lay the solid foundation for a truly happy life. 10. Practicing daily gratitude, grateful each day, living each moment fully. In Stoic philosophy, gratitude is not merely an occasional feeling that arises when fortune smiles, but a deliberate way of living, to be cultivated and practiced every day. The Stoics believe that by regularly nurturing gratitude, one could maintain serenity, contentment, and resilient endurance in the face of adversity. Stoicism teaches that most dissatisfaction and suffering do not arise from external circumstances, but from forgetting the good that already exists. When people focus solely on what they lack, on unmet desires, or on perceived injustice, they easily fall into disappointment and unhappiness. Practicing gratitude redirects attention from deficiency back to abundance and the value of what is present. One recommended Stoic practice for cultivating gratitude is to begin and end each day by reflecting on what deserves appreciation, listing the things, no matter how small, that one possesses, such as health, knowledge, love, or opportunities for learning, nurtures a positive mind and tempers excessive craving. Epictetus reminded us that rather than lamenting what we lack, we should praise what we have been given, things many others may never have. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, often reflected with gratitude on the virtues he had learned from those around him: his father's integrity, his mother's kindness, his teacher's patience. This shows that gratitude is not limited to material things, but extends to the intangible values and lessons life bestows. Practicing gratitude also changes one's perception of hardship. In the Stoic spirit, every adversity contains the opportunity to strengthen moral character. Thus, the practitioner of gratitude learns not only to be thankful for joys, but also to appreciate the challenges, for they are instruments for cultivating wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. A practical technique to deepen gratitude is negative visualization. By imagining the sudden loss of precious things, health, loved ones, freedom, one naturally becomes more appreciative of their presence. This method is not meant to incite fear, but to remind the mind of life's fragility and preciousness. Furthermore, gratitude is linked to a profound recognition that much of what we enjoy today is not solely the result of personal effort, but the cumulative work of countless others, from those who build societies and maintain peace to the silent laborers who sustain daily life. Many contribute to the life we inherit. Such awareness fosters humility and appreciation, both vital qualities in Stoic living. Gratitude also tempers unnecessary desires. When we truly value what we already have, the restless craving for distant or excessive wants diminishes, easing negative emotions such as envy, dissatisfaction, and greed. The practitioner of gratitude understands that true wealth lies not in having more, but in appreciating the true worth of what is already ours. Ultimately, practicing daily gratitude helps maintain a stable inner state, regardless of external turmoil. When the mind becomes accustomed to seeking and recognizing the good within life, even in hardship, a person can sustain tranquility, trust, and enduring joy. 11. Embracing impermanence. Amor Fati. In Stoic philosophy, Amor Fati, love of fate, is a central concept that embodies the active embrace of all events in life, whether favorable or unfavorable. Amor Fati is not mere resignation. It is a posture of loving and cherishing even those outcomes that defy expectation, as necessary and integral parts of life's journey. The Stoics believe that the world operates according to objective natural laws, independent of individual desires. Human beings are but a small part of this vast whole. Expecting life always to unfold according to personal wishes is an illusion that leads to disappointment and suffering. Amor Fati teaches us to abandon futile resistance to reality and instead to flow with the natural course of events, with trust and affection for everything life brings. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself that whatever happens occurs naturally and must therefore be received as a good. He believed that every event, whether fortune or misfortune, contributes to the perfection of the universe, just as each small organ serves the health of the entire body. So every occurrence has its necessary role, whether we understand it or not. The practice of Amor Fati begins with a shift in perspective toward adversity. Rather than viewing misfortune as failure or injustice, the Stoic sees it as an opportunity to cultivate virtue, patience, courage, temperance, and justice. Failure ceases to be a mark of imperfection and becomes a valuable lesson in inner growth. Accepting impermanence also requires releasing the desire to control the future. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that we have power only over our actions and attitudes in the present moment. Outcomes and external events lie beyond our command. When we cease trying to impose our will upon what cannot be controlled, we free ourselves from the burdens of worry, anger, and frustration. Another essential element of Amor Fati is developing gratitude for reality itself. Even in hardship, the Stoic understands that without challenges, there would be no opportunity to develop higher qualities. They give thanks not only for ease and comfort, but also for pain and loss, recognizing these experiences as crucibles for strengthening the soul. Loving fate does not mean passivity in the face of circumstance. The Stoic continues to act rationally and virtuously within the sphere of their control, yet they do so with tranquility, not tethering their happiness to the success or failure of their efforts. This attitude allows them to act fully while preserving inner freedom, regardless of the outcome. A specific method for practicing Amor Fati is to envision potential changes and losses, such as the loss of status, possessions, health, or loved ones. By mentally preparing for the unexpected, the mind becomes more resilient and ready to accept reality with positive acceptance rather than shock or despair. Amor Fati also entails a profound recognition of the finitude of life. The Stoics continually reminded themselves that death is not an injustice, but a natural and necessary part of existence. By accepting the end as part of the natural processes, liberated from needless fear and learn to live each present moment fully. Through loving and actively embracing fate, the Stoic builds an unshakable inner life, resilient amid the inevitable changes of existence. Amor Fati is not merely an attitude, but a pathway to inner freedom, tranquility, and enduring happiness. 12. Practicing mindfulness, the Stoic way. In Stoic philosophy, maintaining mindfulness is not merely a meditative technique, but a fundamental part of everyday life. Mindfulness, in the Stoic sense, is the ability to keep the mind clear and continuously observe one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions to ensure they remain aligned with reason and virtue. Stoics such as Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus emphasize that negligence in thought leads to improper actions, thereby weakening moral character and causing unnecessary suffering. Thus, they regarded continuous self-observation as essential for living a righteous and peaceful life. A foundational practice of Stoic mindfulness is a clear awareness of the present moment. People are often easily drawn into ruminations about the past or anxieties about the future, thereby losing touch with the present. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the past is gone, the future is yet to come, and the only thing truly possessed is the present moment. Therefore, each person's duty is to use the present well, acting according to reason now, without being disturbed by what lies beyond their control. Mindfulness in the Stoic spirit also involves observing and regulating emotional reactions. When strong emotions arise, such as anger, fear, or sadness, rather than reacting impulsively, the Stoic practitioner pauses to recognize the emotion. They ask, is this emotion based on reason? Will it help me act according to virtue? Only after rational reflection is the next action determined. Epictetus emphasized that it is not external events that cause suffering, but our judgments about them. Therefore, the practice of mindfulness requires not only recognizing emotions, but also examining the evaluations and judgments forming within the mind. The mindful individual does not blindly accept every thought that arises, but subjects each to the scrutiny of reason and ethical principles. An important tool for Stoic mindfulness is daily reflection. Many Stoic philosophers advise that at the end of each day, one should take time to review the events of the day. Which actions were in accordance with virtue? What mistakes were made? And what improvements are needed for tomorrow? This process of reflection is not for self-punishment, but for continual adjustment and steady progress on the path of inner excellence. Furthermore, Stoic mindfulness includes an awareness of the impermanence and finitude of all things. By observing life with the understanding that everything changes and ends, one reduces attachment and learns to enjoy the present moment with gratitude rather than living in anxiety or regret. Maintaining mindfulness does not require elaborate rituals or withdrawal from daily life. On the contrary, Stoic mindfulness is practiced amid the bustle of life, at work, in relationships, and through life's trials, big and small. By maintaining continuous observation and deliberate action, the Stoic practitioner gradually builds a mind that is lucid, stable, and harmonious. Through daily mindfulness, one not only avoids impulsive mistakes, but also cultivates self-mastery, courage, and profound tranquility. Mindfulness in the Stoic spirit is the art of living fully and intentionally in each ordinary moment. 13. Perseverance on the journey. Building inner resilience. Stoicism views the cultivation of the self as a lifelong journey. Along this path, perseverance is considered a crucial element that enables one to overcome challenges, maintain integrity, and gradually attain inner freedom. Perseverance is not merely the ability to keep trying when difficulties arise, but a consistent, unwavering attitude that resists being swayed by external turbulence or internal emotions. Stoic philosophers taught that the pursuit of virtue and self-mastery is a continuous process with no fixed endpoint. One should not expect that after a few practices, they will become completely calm, wise, or virtuous. On the contrary, it must be accepted that there will be moments of failure, mistakes, and loss of self-control. Yet what matters is not the avoidance of every error, but the unyielding willingness to rise again, reflect, and continue forward. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you fall, do not waste time looking back at what made you stumble. Stand up and continue on your way." This view highlights the importance of perseverance. In Stoic philosophy, each fall is an opportunity to strengthen the inner self, to learn from experience, and to realign one's course. No setback is wasted if it serves the growth of moral character. Perseverance also enables one to maintain mental stability amid life's constant changes. When facing adversity, illness, loss, or failure, the untrained mind easily succumbs to negative emotions and loses direction. In contrast, one who has fortified their inner self remains grounded in values and principles, responding with calmness and clarity, no matter how difficult the circumstance. To nurture perseverance, the Stoic practitioner relies not only on reason, but also on the cultivation of steady daily habits. These habits include nightly reflection, intentional morning planning, constant reminders of what lies beyond control, and the regular repetition of core philosophical lessons. Through small but consistent actions, they strengthen their inner fortitude day by day. Another key element in building inner resilience is accepting one's personal journey. Stoicism does not impose a standard of immediate perfection. Each person has their own starting point, context, and pace of growth. Thus, the aim is not to become a perfect Stoic, but to strive continually to live better than the day before. Progress, however modest, is worthy of respect if pursued persistently over time. Moreover, perseverance in Stoicism is not a solitary endeavor. The ancient philosophers emphasized the role of community and companions on the moral journey. Sharing, learning, and supporting one another are essential means of sustaining motivation and overcoming moments of disorientation or discouragement. Ultimately, perseverance helps forge a life of steadfastness, not only to withstand challenges, but to live fully in alignment with one's ideals and values. Over the years, this steadfastness cultivates a resilient inner life, increasingly immune to praise and blame, success and loss. It is through repetition, endurance, and an unwavering refusal to give up that a person gradually shapes a life of depth, direction, and the strength to face any upheaval. This is the inner resilience that Stoicism calls us to build. When I first encountered Stoicism, I thought it was a philosophy meant for ancient sages, those who lived in distant temples, detached from the busy realities of modern life. But the more I practiced, the more I realized Stoicism is not reserved for a special class of people. It is for all of us, those living amid the turbulence, anxiety, and pressures of today's world. Each morning, I spend 5 minutes reminding myself of what might lie beyond my control. A failed meeting, a harsh critique, or an unexpected delay. Visualizing these possibilities prepares me to greet the day with a proactive mindset rather than a reactive one. When negative emotions arise, I no longer rush to react. I have learned to observe myself and ask, where is this emotion leading me? Does it help me live true to the values I aspire to? Gradually, I find myself less swept away by anger, envy, or disappointment. I also choose to simplify wherever possible, buying less, comparing less, caring less about unnecessary expectations from others. Strangely enough, the less I cling to, the more complete I feel. Stoicism has not made life easier, but it has made me steadier, and for me that alone is a profound form of happiness. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. Every small action you take is a great motivation for us to continue spreading this valuable philosophy of life. And no matter where life leads us, may we always choose to walk with a steadfast and lucid heart. See you in the next video.